Got it.
So I think we're all set. Prosecutor Deters, thank you so much for joining us on our Marsy's Law interview series, Why We Do What We Do. We really appreciate it. I know you are so busy over there right now.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it.
And I know you know the background here in Marsy's Law in this interview series. We've been highlighting people who really have made a difference in the lives of victims and in the victims' rights movement, from everywhere from elected attorneys general, district attorneys, former judges, moms of murder victims who really have turned their pain into incredible purpose. The stories that we've heard and highlighted are really incredible and inspirational. Thus the name for our series, Why People Get Involved in the Victims' Rights Movement and why it is they do what they do. You give us a great perspective being I think, you and I talked about this, that what defines a career prosecutor. I think being the longest serving prosecuting attorney in Hamilton County, I think would qualify you pretty legit to be a career prosecutor.
Yeah, I'm running out of career time, so that's probably a correct statement.
Well, and the thing is, what you do is you combine a lot of different areas of expertise for us. You've been an elected statewide, you've been a statewide treasurer. So you bring managerial experience, overseeing billions of dollars from that front, an appointed and elected clerk of courts in Hamilton County. And then, like we said before, the longest serving prosecuting attorney, overseeing close to 200 people in your office, from staff, victim witness advocates to assistant prosecuting attorneys. And you started back in 1982 as an assistant prosecuting attorney.
I did, and it's interesting the timing of this, because I was just thinking about this morning. When I first started in the office, and my affinity towards victims and their rights occurred right out of the gate. I was a law student, and as most law students are, you're kind of liberal, and you think you know better than everybody else. You're 24 years old, and we had a bad murder case in our county. I wasn't even out of law school when it occurred. I think I may have just gotten out of law school, taken the bar exam when the trial occurred. But there were 3 co-defendants. It was a robbery of a convenience store, and actually a Procter and Gamble employee was working the convenience store to send his daughter Kim to college. And these 2 guys come in, put him up against the wall, rob the place. And a guy by the name of John Bird took a hunting knife and rammed it into Monty Tewksbury's side, murdering him. Monty was still conscious, called the police, called his wife, who actually arrived at the store before Monty passed away, and because of that, was a witness in the case. They tried there were 3, the driver, the getaway driver, 2 defendants, and they tried them simultaneously in Hamilton County. And my job as this brand new lawyer was to take the wife of Monty Tewksbury to make sure she was prepared and ready to testify. And it was the first time, and it was a baptism by fire, believe me. It was the first time that I got to see the devastating effects this type of crime could have on people. And it made a lasting impression to me for my entire career.
Yeah, and your office has a history of being a victim-centric office as well. And I believe you were in charge of the office when you created the first victim witness advocate.
And Peter, that's exactly why I did it. Because I realized when I became a trial attorney, then we would be in court, and the defense makes motions all the time to dismiss the case and things like that. And you have civilian victims' families sitting in the back of the room, and they're freaking out, hearing that, oh my God, the judge might dismiss this case. Well, I started a victim witness program, so somebody was sitting with these people in court and could say to them, don't worry about it. This happens all the time. It's nothing to get upset about. And it permits us selfishly to be able to concentrate on trying the case, and lets people who are trained in victim advocacy deal with the people in the back of the courtroom.
Yes, because we talk about this a lot. When people are victimized, they're thrust into a brand new world of the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And if they're fortunate, it's the only time they've ever been involved in such a thing. And it's almost like learning a brand new language. And the stakes are so high. And like you said, you see a victim and a victim's family in the back of the courtroom. And they start hearing the word motion to dismiss, and
Right.
all of a sudden they think their whole case is going to be gone in 5 minutes. And which goes to your leadership, but by realizing, okay, this is a hole that needs to be filled, not just in your office, but in the criminal justice system, which led you to be one of our closest allies in the passage of Marsy's law, to enshrine victims' rights, so that victims have equal and enforceable constitutional rights, in the Cincinnati Constitution. Could you tell us a little bit about your passion for Marsy's law and how you helped its passage in 2017?
Well, Marcy's law, they all came to us and said, "Hey, we're looking at getting this put together for the state of Ohio." I could not have been more pleased to be associated with them. Um, Unfortunately, when you deal with the general public, um, because they have never experienced the criminal justice system, they don't realize what a horrific toll it can take on you as a victim and a victim's family. Um, we often talk about, we have these murders in Cincinnati and some of our poorer neighborhoods, and people will march and they'll put balloons and flowers where the person got shot, and they'll interview the mom and they say, "We got to get rid of guns and we have to do all this." And you just wish that it didn't take the murder of their son to realize how this is affecting not just their family, but the entire community. And I think Marcy's law went a long way in Ohio to protect victims' rights. And what's amazing to me is, I sit here today, you'd think that judges would recognize that, judges that have seen this stuff, but time after time, you have judges that choose to put criminals before victims and don't have the respect or sympathy for what these victims' families are going through. I don't expect them to hurt the defendant's constitutional rights, but they need to be sensitive to what the heck is going on the other side of that aisle. And many times they don't. We have other judges that do all the time. So, as you know, Peter, it'd be nice if people paid closer attention to judicial elections once in a while, because they are carrying a huge responsibility. And unless you know their sensitivity towards victims, sometimes you can vote for the wrong person.
Yeah, and when you talk about the democratic process getting involved in the administration of justice, and the entire people of Ohio coming together in 2017 and overwhelmingly voting in favor of putting victims' rights into the state's constitution, what do you think it is, you can attribute it to, that it seems like the focus since then has shifted in a sense from victims' rights to the rights of defendants?
Well, as you can see by the plurality of votes Marcy's law had in Ohio, it used to be the liberal side of the aisle. Now they call themselves progressives, but the progressives in this country recognized they could never do what they do through the electoral process. They couldn't elect a legislature and a governor that would put in place some of the, I think, idiotic models of justice that hurt victims. They couldn't do it. So what they do is they target prosecutors that won't enforce the law, that aren't sensitive to to the victim's rights. In my reelection 2 years ago, Peter, a Soros group came in and gave my opponent a lot of money to beat me. They targeted, I think, 14 prosecutors' races nationwide. They won 12. They won LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Baltimore, all these areas that you see total chaos in. I mean, I don't know what their end game is. Their end game to ruin every urban area in America, because that's been the effect when they've been successful in electing prosecutors who are not caring about the victims, who let people get away with violent crimes, release them constantly, doesn't enforce the law. That's not the role of a prosecutor. And if they want to be in the legislature, they want to be the governor, run for that position. And I say the same thing about judges. If you want to be making laws, go run for governor. Stop being a judge, because that's not your job.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we saw, if you could tell us a little bit about the DuBose versus McGuffey case and how that changed things, and why that particular case is making issue 1 so important.
Well, we had a murder case late last year, and that was the DuBose case. That was, the defendant's name is DuBose. He's from Cincinnati. The murder happened in Cincinnati. He fled the jurisdiction, went to Las Vegas, was apprehended. He had a variety of different identification on different credit cards with different names on it, clearly trying to evade detection and apprehension. And he was brought back to Hamilton County, extradited back. The judge set the bond, I think, at $500,000. The defense filed a motion saying the bond's too high and they wanted it reduced. The judge initially was going to reduce it. Then the victim's family came forward and said, we're in fear of our lives if this guy gets out. So she maintained the $500,000 bond. It went up the appellate level and got to the Ohio Supreme Court, where 4 judges out of 7 voted. And I quote, this is an exact quote from that case. And I tell audiences this all the time, and they think I am not being truthful, but this is what it says: that when setting a bail, a monetary bond, judges shall not consider the safety of the community. And that phrase alone, initially, I was very upset about it. I couldn't believe that 150 years of jurisprudence was set aside in one case, basically by one judge who has decided to do this. And we decided the best route for us to go. I met with the Attorney General of Ohio, Dave Yost, and we fashioned a strategy to put this on the ballot this year, a constitutional amendment, which is not an easy thing. You need 3/5 of the House and 3/5 of the Senate to get it on the ballot. We did it. It became very polarizing in the legislature. Every Republican voted for it. Believe it or not, every Democrat voted against letting judges protect the community. And by the way, these are representatives who represent areas that need that protection. They, of all the areas in Hamilton County, the people that voted against putting this on the ballot is our highest crime areas, which makes no sense to me. But you know, that's the people elect people like that. That's what they get and deserve. Anyway, we got it on the ballot, and the DuBose case started here, and I felt we had a duty to do something about it, and we're doing something about it. And in 3 weeks, I am confident that, as happened with Marsy's law, that this constitutional amendment is going to pass. And And the amendment simply says, when a judge sets bail, they shall consider the safety of the community. It's not that difficult. But our Supreme Court, as it's currently made up, has decided that shouldn't be the law. And we're going to prove them wrong.
Well, it is stunning. And I think when you bring your case right to the people will probably be stunned, as you've probably seen as you've gone statewide. And I know you guys are going to kick off a bus tour on
I
Wednesday.
can't wait.
and I'm sure that a lot of the people that you speak to about this will be surprised that judges are not able to and will not be able to consider the safety of the public when setting cash bail.
Interestingly enough, we have judges, both Republican and Democrat, who have said from the bench, I don't care what the Supreme Court says. I am going to set this bond. You are dangerous. And that's happened on both sides of the aisle. I think if you talk to trial judges, it doesn't matter if they're Democratic or Republican. They think that they have the knowledge to set a bail that they can balance the safety of the community with, the potential violence that somebody may have when they get out. A lot of these cases, as you know, are not murder cases. Some are just domestic violence cases where they let the guy out and they come back and murder their loved one or inflict harm on the spouse or their children. And you'd have to be sticking your head in the sand if you're not watching the headlines around this country of what's going on in these no cash bond states and all this nonsense that they're running down people. And eventually everybody's going to say, what the heck did we do? What did we elect that has caused these urban areas to become, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Escape from New York, but I mean, it is just insanity that they're letting this occur in these urban areas. While I'm prosecutor, that's not going to happen. But, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around. So, I hope voters wake up and realize the significance of not just protecting victims, but protecting community, protecting future victims. There are some people that, Peter, that just aren't savable. I mean, I'm all for saving the savable. Somebody has a drug problem, they're arrested for the first time. Let's get them treatment. Let's get them out of the system. I got no problem with that. But when you start dealing with violent career criminals, there is no solution to that except, unfortunately, to warehouse them and get them off the streets as long as possible.
Well, and your leadership in your office and the way that you work speaks for itself as far as saving the savable. You work in conjunction with specialty courts, with drug courts in your county, with veterans courts. You started your own juvenile diversion program. So anybody who's been watching you and the way you lead realizes that you want to save the savable. Right. And the justice always needs to prevail, and you go into everything with your eyes wide open. The other thing that your constituents benefit from is you say jokingly you're no spring chicken, but experience matters in a situation like this, because not every case is a first degree case. And you size up a case because you've been seeing cases since you were a 1982 assistant prosecuting attorney. You were then elected to be the prosecuting attorney once, and then you went out and did something else, and then you came back again and were elected as the prosecuting attorney. So you've seen the criminal justice system. You've seen the different stages that things have happened within Hamilton County. The 1980s are a lot different than 2022, but you've seen all of that. You've seen what happened from 2017 to 2022, from the passage of Marsy's law to, like you said, some of these prosecuting attorneys from around the country who think that it's more important to end cash bail and empty the prisons than to hold people accountable. And as a result, the criminals are the ones that are running the system. And so right. I think you're referring to yourself as no spring chicken has an enormous benefit for your constituents and for the state of Ohio when you can speak from experience and say, This is what happens when people aren't held accountable. This is what happens when public safety can't be taken into account when cash bail is being considered. So I think your constituents and the people of Ohio are very fortunate to have your leadership when you're talking about an issue as important as this. And when you were talking about trial judges not seeing Democrat or Republican, I think you and I can both agree because we've both been to murder scenes. And, I'm sure you've never been sitting in a living room of a mom who's lost her kid to a murder who asked you if you were a Democrat or Republican.
No. And I can remember rolling up on the families of a murder victim, and shortly after their daughter was murdered, and we're walking in the house, and as we're walking in, all the cars are out there from their friends, and they all had my opponent's bumper sticker on their car. But I probably got not many votes, but they didn't care I was Republican, and I didn't care that they were Democrats. It didn't matter. We were dealing with a serial killer at that time, and we had a dead 10-year-old girl, and I knew what my job was, and I think we carried it out very well.
Yeah, and that brings me to one thing I wanted you to talk about, because people who are watching this are in unique company, because I think you've put away more serial killers as a prosecutor than anyone in American history. I'm sure somebody might want to check on that, but I think from my accounting, that's what it looks like to me. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenge of a serial killer's prosecution? And one of the ones that I was that I had looked into was the Donald Harvey Angel of Death case. If you could just tell us a little bit about that case and what it's like.
Yeah, I was an assistant in 1987, and we had a nursing assistant at the county-owned hospital who was killing patients. Now, these patients were in a ward that they were expected to die. So he had a victim who, when they died, it wasn't a surprise. But he had, from another job, stolen cyanide, and he would take cyanide and mix it with a little bit of water and pour it into a victim's gastric tube, which causes instantaneous death. We were really lucky in Donald Harvey because I think he killed 23 people at this hospital, mostly by cyanide.
Was this Drake Hospital in Cincinnati?
It was Drake Hospital. And what was interesting was most of his victims, they didn't even autopsy. They were elderly, they were very ill, things like that. But the victim in which he was caught had been in a motorcycle accident, and he killed this gentleman with cyanide. Because it was a motor vehicle homicide, they had to be autopsied. So they went to the county coroner's office, and the deputy coroner opened the lining of the stomach of the victim and smelled cyanide. Now, what's remarkable is I think only 15% of the general population can smell cyanide. So we were lucky that this particular deputy coroner, his name was Jonathan Hirsch, became the coroner up in Nassau County, New York, could smell the cyanide in the stomach. And as soon as he smelled it, he's like, got everybody backed away. You come in contact with this stuff, you can die. And that's how we found out we had a cyanide overdose. I've prosecuted 5 serial killers, believe it or not. What's always, it kind of stunned me the first time, was that there is a compulsion to kill. Like, if you look at a serial killer, once they kill, it's not necessarily like a sexual release, because there's nothing involved in that at all. But once they make the kill, they're okay for about a month or two. And then this urge to kill starts building in them again, and then they kill again. If you look at Donald Harvey, the chart of the murders, it's like every month, every other month, he's killing somebody. And that's not unusual for serial killers at all.
Yeah, it appears that his killing spree went on for decades, and he killed upwards of 70 people, something just almost incomprehensible.
He was working in a hospital down in London, Kentucky, and killed a bunch of people down there. He is, I remember when he was going to plead guilty to our murders, I brought in a forensic psychiatrist by the name of Tanai. He was out of Detroit, Michigan, and he did the Ted Bundy case and a variety of different serial killers. And I just, after he had interviewed Harvey for a couple of days, I went to dinner with him and I said, well, this guy, I just said, made an offhand comment, this guy's got to be crazy. He said, Joe, he's not crazy. Okay. He has a compulsion to kill. And the reason why you, even as a prosecutor, want to make a comment like, oh, he must be crazy, is because you would like to think that you could recognize somebody like Donald Harvey in your everyday life. And if you have to admit to yourself that you can't recognize somebody like, because I couldn't recognize Donald Harvey as a serial killer. If you have to admit that you could not identify somebody like that, then you have to admit your own vulnerability to somebody like that. So it was kind of a eye-opening moment for me when he said, look, you say that because you want to subconsciously protect yourself. You're saying, oh, I could tell that guy's gonna be crazy. Well, he's not. I mean, if you look at the life of Ted Bundy or any of these serial killers, they live pretty normal lives, and kind of frightening that they could be out there. And I know the FBI thinks there's probably a couple hundred out there right now.
Yeah, well, I have to say that I'll say it again, that the people that you serve, your constituents in Hamilton County, are so blessed to have someone of your experience and your leadership to be able to keep the streets safe, especially this day and age when public safety has become such a challenge in the cities across America.
I really appreciate that, Peter. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, you are a great leader for Ohio, and really a great leader for America to look to when they look at the platinum standard for what a prosecutor should do and how a prosecutor should protect the public. So I thank you for that. I just want you to know, and I think you do, that Marsy's Law stands shoulder to shoulder with you and your efforts and your office's efforts to get issue 1 passed. We're going to do everything we can to help you. I know, I'm not sure of if Triffin, your chief of staff, has told you, but your bus tour is going to be 3 days long. You're going to stop at least 12 stops. Yeah. You're going to probably have to get on the road sooner than you think. I'm sorry that your Cincinnati Reds are not in the playoffs, but at least you got Cleveland. Well, that's right. And well, that's true, but the Bengals are looking better, so I'm holding out hope for our professional teams. Joe Burrow's a tough guy to beat, and we will do everything we can to help you. And what can people do? Get out to vote November 8th, and tell us, give us one last pitch on issue 1. Well, if you believe in public safety, there's no question that yes, on issue 1 is I hate to use the term, but it's a no-brainer. If you want to give the judges the ability, put it back in their hands, let them know that they should be considering public safety before they let a violent person out of jail. Sounds great. Good luck with everything. We'll be in touch, and
thanks,
good luck
Peter.
on the bus tour. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Prosecutor Deters.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Have a great day. Nice to see you.
See you.